Everybody, welcome to another episode of Mormon Expositor. This is Heather, and today I'm going to be interviewing somebody who is active in the ex-Mormon world online and has an interesting project coming up. His name is Bart Pasquale. Hello, Bart.
Hello. How you doing, Heather?
Doing good. Thanks for coming on. So what I thought we would do is first talk about your relationship with Mormonism, how you became disaffected, or whatever term you like to use, and then in the end we can talk about the projects that you're doing online.
Right. Okay.
So tell me about your life in Mormonism. Were you born into the church?
Yes. Yeah. We have a big family. I was born and raised in Mormonism. My mother came from a long line of pioneer Mormons, and then my dad converted from Catholicism.
Before they were married or after?
Yeah, like they were courting, and then he became Mormon so that she would be more comfortable marrying him. Okay,
so then you were like born in the covenant. It wasn't like you got to go through the temple as a kid to be sealed to your parents or anything.
Yeah, I think I actually did as a baby because he was not LDS long enough.
Okay.
But as far as I really think of it, I was born in the Mormon church.
Yeah.
Raised in it all my life.
Okay. Yeah, some people just have interesting experiences as children going in the temple before, their endowments, but it doesn't sound like you remember that.
No.
Thing. Okay. So, what was it like growing up in the church? Was your family really devout? Did you do the family home evening thing? No rated R movies, or how did that work?
Yeah, no rated R movies. We did the family home evening on and off. It was, sometimes we would even, read scriptures as a family in the morning before school or whatever. My parents were very strict about stuff like that. Like, I remember I couldn't play Dungeons and Dragons as a kid because my mom said that it was of the devil. And, the playing cards, all that kind of stuff.
So you were a little more on the conservative end as far as no face card, no rated R movies. Were you
the face cards thing didn't last very long.
I remember when I was growing up, it was kind of like, oh, we're doing something a little bad here, but we'll just look the other way and play with them.
Yes, that's how it was. We would always kind of go, I thought we weren't supposed to play with these kind of cards. Oh, well, these ones are okay because it's Rook, and this is a bird's face, not a man's face. And then pretty soon we just stopped talking about that.
Yep. So how about yourself? Were you a believer as a kid and as a teenager? Did you play right along, or did you have a rebellious phase? How'd that go?
I was a little bit rebellious. I mean, I kind of resented as a 14 to 17-year-old boy. I really resented the assumption that I would go on a mission. It wasn't ever, hey, do you want to go on a mission? It was, hey, Bart, where are you going to go on your mission? The assumption that I was going to do it. And I just didn't like that at all.
So you kind of chafed against the lack of free will.
Choice.
Yeah, choice. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. But I was never rebellious in the way I never drank or anything like that. But I was always I had other ways to rebel. And I got a girlfriend that was outside the church that wasn't Mormon, so that, I could do things with her that I couldn't do with a Mormon girl,
Gotcha. Okay. So did you end up going on a mission?
I did. I did go on a mission. I did not want to. I said, no, I'm not going to go. I told everyone I wasn't going to go. And then there were lots of tears and gnashing of teeth. And basically, I just ended up going.
You caved to the emotional pressure that Mormonism is so good at applying.
Yeah, but I'll tell you what, the minute I decided I was going to go, I was all in. I was just like a switch went off in my head. I was 100% gung-ho. I was all in for it. And I was a very devoted missionary. I obeyed all the rules. I was very serious about it. Mm-hmm. I took it very seriously.
Did you work to save up for your mission?
I worked. But then I didn't want to go, so I was just kind of spending the money on whatever I wanted. So
Okay.
no, I didn't really save up.
Okay. Because I've been wondering about that, how much a mission costs if a missionary is supposed to... I mean, I didn't really do all the typical Mormon things, so I'm not familiar with how, like, paying for a mission goes, if the family and the kid is supposed to pay for it, or that kind of a
Well,
thing.
when I was going, they would talk about it all depending on where you were going, how much it was going to cost. But then they switched it to a uniform payment plan by the time I went. I went to Salta, Argentina from 1990 to 92.
And so your payment ended up being the same standard amount as somebody going to, like,
Yes.
Omaha.
It was $350 a month. And my parents paid that.
Okay.
I think I might have, like, the last few months before I decided to go, I probably saved up probably $1,000 or something. Couldn't have been more than that.
Okay. So did you enjoy your mission, or how did it turn out?
I did enjoy it. I learned to speak Spanish, and I really loved the people in Argentina. And it was really easy to convert lots of Catholics to Mormonism. At the time it was. I don't know how it is down there now for missionaries, but at the time we were baptizing lots of people.
Why do you think it was so easy to convert them?
Well, I mean, they were just looking, a lot of times they were just looking for something else because they just were in this religion that's their family tradition.
Oh, okay.
It was something unique and new.
Okay.
And there wasn't internet back then, and so there was nothing for them to research. I had an idea about some of the problems with Mormonism, but I had kind of a bad experience getting exposed to it as a teenager because I grew up in the Washington State, and at the time there was Ed Decker.
Oh, okay. And the God Makers.
Yeah, and the kids at the high school, the other teenagers, they would show that movie at their church or whatever, then they would talk to me about it at church, but it was more like just teasing kind of thing. It would be like, oh, you guys believe this, and then they would come up with crazy outlandish things that I supposedly believed, and I was like, that's not true. And so basically they kind of poisoned the well for me. I just didn't want to look into anything because it seemed like it was all outrageous lies.
So the whole rhetoric about anti-Mormon material, that seemed very real to you based on your experience?
Oh, yeah, because they'd be like, oh, you guys have horns. I'm like, I don't have horns. Well, you're going to grow horns. Oh, you guys, when you get married in the temple, you have to have sex on the altar. I'm like, that's ridiculous. And so then when they would tell me things like, Joseph Smith said that there were people living on the moon, I would be like, yeah, right. I don't think he said that.
Right,
Even though it turns out he did say that people live on the moon. And
dressed like Quakers.
yeah, the people that dress like Quakers. And so everything that they said, I was able to just kind of discount it because they had basically thrown in all kinds of crazy things.
Okay. Did Argentina suffer the soccer baptisms or whatever they're called? And was that in that time period, or was that after or before you?
I never saw anything or heard anything about that. We didn't baptize like whole soccer teams or anything crazy like that. We would just get investigators by just tracting around, and we baptized probably 2 or 3 people a month. Gotcha.
That's still pretty good for a missionary count at the end of your mission, but that's definitely not the soccer or baseball or whatever they were doing back a few decades ago. Okay, so...
Yeah, but I was a stickler for the rules, and I was very serious about the mission work, and I didn't goof off or anything.
And then, so you came home from your mission, and did you go to school? Did you get married really quick? What happened after you came home from your mission?
Yeah, I got married really quick. I was still probably 21 or just turned 22. Actually, yeah, I was still 21 years old, and my wife 19. Got very young. We started having kids right away, and I was going to this school at the University of Washington.
Okay. Was she somebody that you knew ahead of time, or did you have the very brief Mormon date engaged? Very
brief Mormon. So I came home from my mission. I went to a young single adult dance. She was there in the fall of 92, and we were engaged by New Year's Eve is when we got engaged, and then we got married in May.
So very traditional Mormon courtship.
Yeah, it was like 5 months, I think, before the whole thing was said and done.
Right.
So it's very fast.
Right. So you're going to the University of Washington. You start having kids. Anything come up as a young married couple as far as Mormonism is concerned?
No, we were just studious, working hard, and active men's. We went to church every Sunday. We did our callings, all that kind of stuff.
Living the traditional poor, early married Mormon with kid type life.
Extremely poor, yeah. We found a job apartment managing so that we didn't have to pay rent, and we just kind of scraped by that way.
Okay. So tell me about your experience going through the temple and a little bit about your wife's experience going through the temple if you don't think she would mind you sharing that. Did you guys have like shocked reactions or did you just think it was okay? How did that go for you guys?
Well, I went through in 1990, and it was maybe just a couple months after they had switched out, taken away the blood oaths. Mm-hmm. And my parents I guess they were not aware that those oaths had been taken out. So before we went to the temple, they were like warning me or something. They sat me down there like, hey, when we go to the temple, my mother used the word blood. She's like, it's going to be very bloody. And my dad's like, no, not bloody. And my mom's like, so they were just like trying to get me, primed for this horrible experience. I was like, what the heck is going to happen when I go to this temple? So then I go and I was expecting something horrible and then it wasn't that bad.
Did your parents say anything about that afterwards?
Yeah, we talked about it a little bit afterwards, and they were like, "Oh, aren't you so glad it's so beautiful? They changed it. It's great now." They were very happy about that.
Oh, interesting. Okay. So you really didn't have, because you were expecting something so awful, you didn't have a bad reaction to it?
No, I didn't have a bad reaction to it. I thought, this is odd, but I was a little bit prepared because they had prepared me for the worst case ever.
Okay.
But I did have an interesting experience. There were 4 of us boys that grew up together that went all through the temple at the same time because we were going into the MTC at the same time. So it was all 4 of us and then all our families and the whole ward and everything. And we all got our names and then we went through and I went up to the veil and you know how they ask you for your secret name, and I gave the name and they said, oh, that's the wrong name. And I was like, that's the name that he gave me. And apparently they had given me the name that is used for the people that are going through on behalf of the dead, not for the living.
Okay.
They have 2 sets of names. So then they had to figure out if I had to start over or if they could give me a new name on the spot. So they gave me a new name on the spot and I went through. And so by the time I got in, I was the last person. And they were kind of teasing me a little bit. Oh, you forgot the name. And I was like, no, I didn't forget the name. They told me it was the wrong one. So then all 4 of us all had a moment of cognitive dissonance where we looked at each other and like, well, how did they know that you gave the wrong name? So we were all talking about that.
So it was it all of a sudden everybody was aware that they had the same secret name?
No. One of my friends, who was a little bit more rowdy than the rest of us, in the car on the way home, a light went on in his head, and it was just us talking. We were getting driven to like a restaurant. We were all going to have a feast or something. And he's like, I figured it out. We all got the same name. And the rest of us were like, no, that's ridiculous. How could we all have had the same name? Because that's the name that we had in heaven before we were born. And that's just a huge coincidence that we would all have the same name, right? And he blurted out the name. I got this name. Isn't that the one you got? We all just stone-faced, like, oh, you're not supposed to say the name. But then we were just shocked because that was the name that we were just given.
Right.
We were totally confused.
So you didn't have any angst about going through temple stuff. How about your wife? Do you think she'd be okay with you sharing?
Yeah, she didn't really talk about it at the time, but she's told me since we've left the church that, yeah, she was totally freaked out.
Freaked out by it. Did she go through her endowment on the same day you guys got married?
The day before.
That's got to be traumatic, I think. But then you've got that sort of Damocles hanging over your head. If you back out of that or if you say anything, your whole marriage that everybody's in town for is messed up. And yeah. Okay, so you guys are a young married couple and going to church, doing your callings, living the typical young married Mormon life. At what point did disaffection start to rear its ugly head?
For me, it wasn't until probably 2010. Throughout my whole Mormon life, I was always the guy that would confess. Like if I masturbated, I would confess to the bishop and then get in trouble and all that kind of stuff. Confess to the mission president. So I never really got really high callings because I was always
You were a sinner.
I was very forthright about that. And so where was I going with that? Okay, so anyways, I'm trying to work out repentance with, in 2010 it was.
After you'd been married a very long time, right? Like 8 years? No, 28 years. I'm bad at math.
We've been married, that was 18 years at the time. We've been married 20 years now, yeah.
Okay.
And yes. So my wife, we started getting very spiritual, and I've told this story so many times now. It's just we were just reading the Bible together because we decided, hey, we're going to get very serious about our religion, and we were studying together, praying together. It was like it was a revival for just our couple. We were just taking our religion very seriously. And we were reading the Bible together, and we were reading the New Testament, and we decided to start in Matthew in the New Testament. That's the first book, right? Mm-hmm. And I remember the first passage we came to that gave us pause was in Matthew 22. There's a passage where the Pharisees are, hey, a woman marries a man and then he dies. So she marries the brother and then he dies, and she marries 7 brothers and then they all die, including the woman. They ask Jesus, so who will she be with in the resurrection? And Jesus says to them, oh, you guys err in your ways. You don't understand the scriptures. There is no marriage in heaven. They're not received or given in marriage. We'll all be like the angels. So my wife and I are looking at each other like, this isn't right. This is supposed to be eternal marriage, right? How come Jesus isn't teaching them about getting married in the temple for time and all eternity?
Yeah, his answer should have been like, well, which one was she sealed to? The first one, right?
Something like that. There wasn't anything about it. He totally dismissed it all. And so my wife and I were very disturbed by that.
Okay, so sorry to interrupt and to sound like a pervert, but a little bit earlier you were talking about confession with the bishop. Had that folded into this at some point?
Yeah, I had confessed like pornography and stuff, and the bishop was working with me, and he was giving me reading assignments, and I was reading I was taking it very seriously. I was reading everything that he was giving me to read and jumping through every hoop that I needed to get back in good graces of the church and all that. Mm-hmm. And one of the assignments that they gave me to do was to read the New Testament. So that's what we were doing. So
what happened when you guys stumbled upon this? What kind of conversation did you have, or how big of an issue did that become with the no marriage in heaven? Not at all. I mean, we just kind of like thought about it and we're like, this is different than what we know. And then we kept reading, and everything we were reading, it wasn't just that, it was everything about Jesus that we were reading was totally different than what we understood as Mormons. And to put an example on that, it's just the character of Jesus. He was very witty, sarcastic, and not always, he's going into the temple with the whip and stuff. Imagine that you have the picture, that you have in your mind as a Mormon is this very meek, very humble, very quiet Jesus. And he's not that at all. He's something completely different. And so we were just discovering a different character aspect of the whole story. That, more than the temple marriage thing, really got us thinking. That why, if we have the true religion, is Jesus depicted so differently in what we teach than what the records say about him? Yeah. Okay. And then there was the whole thing of, how do I get forgiveness of my sins? And so I'm studying and reading, and then you're reading in the Book of Mormon. What does it say? We are saved by grace after all we can do. That's 2 Nephi 25:23. The third article of faith says we are saved by obedience. Moroni 10:32 says, if we deny ourselves all ungodliness, then will his grace be sufficient for us. So what does that mean? I have to deny all ungodliness from myself. Then I can be forgiven, right? Mm-hmm. And then I was reading in the Bible, and it just basically says the opposite of that I can just be forgiven. You can just see it. Jesus is forgiving the guy on the cross, and he's not doing anything. He's just sitting on the cross after a thief and a murderer or whatever. So the classic problem of grace that often Christians and Mormons come to loggerheads about was a big issue. That was a big issue for me. That's where it came to, like you said, loggerheads. I was reading in The Miracle of Forgiveness, and I don't know if you're familiar with that book very much, but it's awful. It's awful, isn't it? It's Spencer W. Kimball wrote in that book that the repentance that merits forgiveness requires the transgressor to reach this is me paraphrasing. Right. Requires the transgressor to reach a point where they no longer desire to sin. So I was when I was reading that, I was thinking, well, I'm never going to get to that point where I won't desire. Right. I always desire stuff. Right. Mm-hmm. Because you're human. Because I'm human, yeah. Right. And I don't expect that to ever change. I desire good things and I desire bad things. But that passage by Spencer W. Kimball was like the straw that broke the camel's back for me, because when I read that statement, I knew that it was false. Mm-hmm. Like, I knew that it was an incorrect statement, that it was either a lie or Spencer didn't know what he was talking about. So at that time, did you also buy into the idea that if you sin and you repent for it and then you do it again, your repentance for the previous sins is wiped out and it's like you never repented at all? Yes. Yeah, so absolutely. It's like this horrible repentance treadmill that you're on that you can never get off, and that's set to like super steep and super fast. That's what I was taught. That's what it says in the Doctrine and Covenants, that once you sin again, that the previous sins are brought back onto you. I don't even remember what the passage is, but you know what
that's how I believed as a Mormon, and it was just killing me. Like, I couldn't handle it. It was just too much.
And so based on what you had read for yourself about what Jesus taught about forgiveness, you knew that you could no longer buy what Mormonism was selling about repentance.
Exactly.
So what kind of a fallout did that have? Did you reach a point where you didn't want to be a Mormon anymore, or did that lead you to investigating truth claims? What continued that path?
So my wife and I said, well, we're just going to be for Jesus, and we're just going to go to Mormon church. We're just not going to partake in all this other crap. We're not going to go to the temple. We're not going to do all this other stuff. We're just going to do whatever we want. But we didn't want to like upturn and upheave the whole family and extended family and the friends. And because it's a big social change and a life change to get rid of all that.
And you had teenage kids in the church and all that kind of stuff.
Teenagers, yeah. Mm-hmm. So we were just going to keep going to Mormon church, but be ourselves kind of thing.
Okay.
And then my wife was like, well, if we're not going to go to the temple, and that wasn't a bad thing because we both said, I don't want to wear those stupid hats or do all that silly stuff in the temple anymore. So we had decided we're not going to go back to the temple. But she's like, if we keep going to Mormon church, we're going to be second-class citizens if we're not going to the temple. And I knew that she was right. I was like, yeah, we'll be the second-class citizens. So we only ended up going for a couple more weeks after that.
So then did you guys start looking for Christian denominations to join, or did you guys just decide that you'll just do it on your own? No
Well,
religion?
I was very anti-establishment because I just didn't like the idea of any denomination telling me what I had to believe. I didn't want to go to a certain kind of church and have some old guy in another state sending church materials over and telling us what to do. And so my wife and I went and scoped out a local community church, and we liked it. We came back and we're like, hey kids, you guys want to try this place out? So the next Sunday we all went together. It was a lot of fun.
Were there any growing pains with the differences in what they were used to being taught and what was taught at the Christian church?
No, my kids just latched on. They were like, oh, they have guitars and drums and music. This is awesome. Okay. So they were all over it. They didn't care.
Oh, good. Okay. All right. So it sounds like you guys got out over differences in, doctrine that don't have anything to do with the problems in Mormonism. At some point, did you guys start looking into that too?
Yes. Actually, to back up just a little bit, when I was looking into the how to be forgiven stuff and the after all we can do, the grace after all we can do, I started putting a list together of all the things I needed to do as a Mormon so that I could figure out what all I could do was. I don't know if you've actually seen that list. It grew to 613 line items.
You put it online somewhere, right?
Yes. I created an Excel spreadsheet of all the rules that I could find. So on my way out of Mormonism, I read the Book of Mormon, I read the Doctrine and Covenants, the Pearl of Great Price, and dozens and dozens of conference talks and Bible and everything I could get my hands on in my own library and online so I could find all the rules in Mormonism. And I posted it at afterallwecando.com. And if you go there, it's just a list that just never ends.
Right, of all the things you're expected to do just to get into heaven. Is that a standard of getting into the celestial kingdom, or is that just the base level?
I don't know. All I know is in Mormonism it says we are saved by grace after all we can do. The third article of faith says saved by obedience. So here's the list. Here's all the things you need to be obedient to.
So it's no commentary on what kingdom you'll go to then, just what the church tells you. These are the obligations you need to meet.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. All right. You put that up about the time you left, or was that later?
It was right about the time. I think I posted online maybe a couple weeks after I resigned from the Mormon church. Because once we decided we were going to be out, we resigned that Sunday. So we were active all the way up until the point that we resigned.
Okay, so it kind of all came about quickly. There was no drawn-out angst with the family and all that kind of stuff. How did your families react?
I have a brother that left the church when he was a teenager, and so they've been quite familiar with someone who's out of the Mormon church for 20 years now. So when I told them that I wasn't going to be a Mormon anymore, they were very accepting. Because they were like, oh, you're going to be just like my brother. But it wasn't until a couple months later that they realized that I wasn't going to be just like Vinny, because my brother Vince is what I would call a Jack Mormon. So he doesn't go to church, but he still defers to the church.
So you quickly learned that there is a huge distinction between the acceptance of a Jack Mormon and the acceptance of a non-believer.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. And so did they become heartbroken at that point when they realized you were actually rejecting the gospel?
Yeah, that's when That's when the heartbreak was.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a little bit of a delayed reaction.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think they started to see some of my online activity as well. Because I just came out of Mormonism running. I came out with a website and everything. And so that was just, I don't know if most people probably don't do that. So.
Right. Okay, so you posted the After All We Can Do information and you started going to a Christian denomination. At what point did Mormon infographics become what it is now? When did you start doing that?
I never really set out to make another website. I had one website, and that was the one I was nursing. I never really set out to make another one. But one day when Warren Jeffs was in the news, I was curious what the difference is between Warren Jeffs and Joseph Smith. So I made a chart comparing the two. How many wives each one had, how many wives were sisters of each other, what the age of the youngest wife was. Without a website or anything, I just posted it on Facebook and all the forums. And then I did that a few more times with a few other charts, like the wives of Joseph Smith and a few others. And then when I had maybe 5 or 6 charts or infographics, people were asking me, hey, where's this one? I need to get a copy of it. And they would message me, and I couldn't even remember where I posted them. And so finally I was like, I got to put a website together. I just made a blog, and I just started posting them one after the other.
And what kind of a reaction have you received from people?
Like from my Mormon family, my extended family, they're not happy about it at all. They don't really talk about it anymore, but at first they were like, you're an anti-Mormon, and we don't want to have people like you talking to our children. And I got a lot of, don't come to our house.
Wow.
And then,
so
it's all backed off from that.
Have you guys had conversations about the fact that the stuff you're posting isn't lies? Did you try to approach them with that?
Yeah, I said, hey, well, what, like the Wives of Joseph Smith chart. That's the one that has Joseph Smith at the top, and it's like a pedigree chart of all the wives. And I was like, well, what about this chart isn't true? What about this chart is a mistake or a lie? And they were just like, we don't care. You can bring facts all you want. We have the Spirit. The Spirit tells us that it's true. And it doesn't matter how many facts you bring. And I had a friend say that I'm using too much man's intellect. There was a lot of that.
Okay. But by and large, the ex-Mormon world loves them, I think, right?
Yeah. The ex-Mormon world loves them. Some of the fringe Mormons love them too. I had a friend who thanked me. I don't know if he was being sarcastic. He was a Mormon friend. He thanked me for the After All We Can Do website. He was like, now I have a whole list that I can just follow and obey all the commandments.
And you were like, no, that's not the point.
Yeah. Of all the infographics, and I have like 33 of them, of all the infographics, probably the most popular is the Wives of Joseph Smith.
Is that the one, or was it the one comparing Joseph Smith to Warren Jeffs that Richard Dawkins linked to?
Richard Dawkins linked to the Wives of Joseph Smith chart, the 34 wives.
Okay.
And he has like 300,000 followers or something, or 600,000, and they all looked at it one time. So I got a lot of hits that way. So
you got a good spike in your website viewership?
A little bit. He copied the picture and posted it. Mm-hmm. So I have no way of knowing how many hits these graphics have gotten, because a lot of them get incorporated into other documents, like the famous CES letter. Mm-hmm. Letter to a CES director. That's got a lot of my infographics in it. Mormon Think posts the Wives of Joseph Smith and a bunch of others on their website. So people just post it on their websites. So I can only tell you how many hits it's received on my webpage.
Okay. You developed a fan page on Facebook for Mormon infographics, right? Yeah,
I found that I can get more interaction with Mormons through the Facebook site than through the website. Mm-hmm. You post a website and Mormons will never see it. You post something on Facebook, and then if you click like, your Mormon friends will see that it was liked by you, and it'll show up in their Facebook feed, and Mormons all of a sudden are talking about it.
And you experienced a little bit of their wrath, right?
Oh, that happens regularly.
It's still happening.
Yes. So what happens is there must be like a bot army of Mormons or something that go around and they flag attack. So they just click on whatever it is you're posting and they say that it's offensive. Mm-hmm. So the last time I got banned from Facebook, it was a post about the Book of Abraham. And all the post said was, hey, this is a really good link. It has all 3 facsimiles in one location. So it was a link that I had put together that had all 3 of the facsimiles analyzed in one website. And then they had flagged it as nudity. So Facebook told me that I am being banned because I'm posting naked pictures, even though there was a picture of the only naked picture, I guess, in there was Min, God the Father's phallus.
Yeah.
I don't think that was what it was. They just flag attack. They'll say that I was being racist or whatever. They just check boxes and say I was doing something bad.
What's the recourse there? What happens when something gets flagged to be banned? Do you have, a process you can go through behind the scenes on Facebook where you can get it straightened out?
No, there's nothing you can do. There's no box to say, I protest. There's no box to say, hey, analyze this. There's not even a phone number or an email address that you can contact them.
So you just have to restart every time?
No, they give you like a penalty box for so many days. And then when you come out of the penalty box, then you can start posting again.
Oh, goodness. So basically, Facebook has no method by which I'm saying this wrong. On Facebook, anybody can be banned whether or not it's justified. It's just whether or not there's a group of people willing to cause you a headache.
Yeah, if enough people post that something's offensive or whatever, then you get banned automatically. And then
does that thing that was considered offensive, does that no longer show up? Is it gone off your account?
Yeah, it's deleted, so then you have to repost it.
Repost it. Okay. So it's kind of just like whoever's willing to wait out the other person, right? And keep just reposting it, and it gets banned and reposted. I've talked to a lot of other people that are counter message kind of people that are posting information that isn't so faith promoting, and they all have the same experience. Mm-hmm. They all get banned. Okay. Like you'll talk to the guy that does the temple videos, he gets banned on Facebook. Mm-hmm. Everybody does. If the Mormons don't like your message, they'll go underhandedly get you banned. Mm-hmm. Okay. And we don't return the favor. I mean, obviously, I'm never going to go on their websites and try to get them banned. Right. And now Bart and I are joined by Nolan Meekum so that we can discuss Bart's new project, which is selected readings from the Journal of Discourses of Brigham Young basically pontificating, right?
Yes.
Hi, Nolan.
Hi.
So before we start talking about Bart's new project, do you want to spend about 5 minutes introducing yourself, explaining your interactions with Mormonism and who you are?
Sure. Well, I was born and raised in Woods Cross, Utah, just a few miles north of Salt Lake City. My parents all even though they were, third and fourth generation Mormons, my parents weren't active. My mother's family, in fact, my grandparents, her parents had only been nominal members of the church, but the larger portion of my fairly large extended family there were LDS and active. So, we had the church on the corner, and I went for scout activities and dances and occasionally to church, but I was never really very interested in it at the time, and really didn't get interested in the church until I was married at not quite 19 years old and too young to be married, and we had moved to California and was basically fellowshipped into the church. I was young and in over my head as far as trying to grow up too soon, and it offered some structure and some community for me, and so my wife and I at the time became quite active and had a whole passel of kids and, did the whole temple route and all of that. Mm-hmm. That really lasted until I was about, 30, I suppose. I was getting really frustrated with my life in the church, certainly, because as many know, it's a difficult, or at least in those days, it was a difficult kind of thing to do. You were always in that double bind of not being good enough. Mm-hmm. So I was getting pretty desperately unhappy and depressed and so forth with this inability to really make it fit for me without getting into a lot of detail. My story's not so different from a lot of other young people at the time. I'm not young any longer. We're talking 30 years ago. Mm-hmm. So I just decided, it may be true, may not be true, but it isn't working for me. And I basically, as they say, in my heart, left when I was about 31 or 32. Then just kind of set it aside. My first wife and I got divorced. We went on our separate ways trying to raise our kids. Mm-hmm. And it really wasn't until the 90s that I really decided to address the issue. And so started looking into the history of the church.
Okay. And then you were involved in early online activities, listservs, message boards type things?
I was. As soon as I got, on the interwebs, as they say, mm-hmm. I started searching for issues related to Mormonism and came across Eric Katunen's site, which I don't recall what it was at the time, but there was also the altreligion.net that I participated in and participated in a lot of those arguments and early flame wars and so forth, and really became very familiar with the historical problems with Mormonism. About 96, I think it was 96 or 97, we organized the Recovery for Mormonism Foundation, which was the precursor to the current ex-Mormon. What do they call it now, Bart?
The Ex-Mormon Foundation.
There we go.
Jones's thing. Yes.
The group that
I got involved with that and was at several of in fact, was one of the organizers for the first conventions that we were having in Las Vegas.
And are that's the group that has the conventions in October here in Salt Lake City now?
That's correct.
Okay. All right. That's good to know. So, Bart, can we talk about what inspired this project? What made you decide that you wanted to record, or I'm not sure exactly how to say it. You decided you wanted to put videos of you on YouTube of somebody playing Brigham Young saying the awful things he said, right?
Yeah, because I've shared a lot of the quotes on my website and on forums and with family and friends and stuff, and it's so easy to just dismiss everything that Brigham said because it's written on paper and you just can't seem to pull it to modern times and have it be, right there in your face. And what I wanted to do is bring the words of Brigham to life, put him in the tabernacle where he was speaking these things over the pulpit. And what I thought would be a really great medium for that would be on YouTube. Have an actor come in costume, period costume, read the journal discourses word for word in a dramatic fashion, and over a pulpit in the tabernacle. So I have the green screen set up with the tabernacle in the background, and it was really difficult finding someone that could fill Brigham's shoes. I screen tested with a few people, and I even had one guy come out, and he spent an entire day, actually 2 days. And he read for me, and he was this guy that I found on the street, and he was a Brigham impersonator, but he's not a professional actor. And when I got him on camera with all the lights and the sound equipment and everything going, he just got a little bit nervous, and it wasn't quite it. So I was expressing my frustrations to my friend Kath, who's the current president of the Ex-Mormon Foundation, and she connected me with Nolan. And Nolan and I had a talk on Skype one day, and we hit it off. And Nolan came up from California to my house, and we had a wonderful time together. So, Nolan, what appealed to you about the project? What made you decide you wanted to go all the way from California to do this?
Well, full disclosure, we worked it in a vacation road trip that my wife and I had already planned.
Okay.
I just needed to make some minor tweaks to the schedule to make this happen. And we ended up, we worked the better part of a full day just on the recording, as I recall. What was it, 6, 7 hours, 8 hours?
Yeah, you spent about an hour and a half in costume.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
Yeah, and then we spent the rest of the day working. And I thought it would take a lot longer, but you're a professional working actor. You've got a lot of experience with doing this type of work, so we didn't really have to do a lot of takes. You'd read it, and usually I'd just take it on the first take. Sometimes we'd do 2 or 3 if it was something we really wanted to make sure was like a really good quote, like the javelin quote or something.
So how did you pick? Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, well, I was just going to say, part of what appealed to me, and again, yes, I'm an actor. This was a kind of a unique project. For one thing, Bart's approach was to simply to do these videos from a perspective that didn't carry any animus or any agenda. There was no sarcasm intended. And as an actor, I have to like my character that I'm playing, even if, whether they're a bad guy or a good guy, when you're talking about a play or a film in a narrative fashion. And it's not hard to like Brigham Young. I mean, he was a character of magnitude. He just was larger than life. And he was a very articulate man. I mean, brilliant. However you may feel about the way he ran his kingdom, he was certainly a compelling figure. And so, how could I pass that kind of an opportunity?
Right, yep. So how did you guys select which quotes from the Journal of Discourses that you wanted to record?
Well, I did that, and I think that was mostly me. I put up all the quotes that were the most famous ones that everybody knows, obviously. And then I kind of posted that up on Reddit forum, the ex-Mormon forum, and people gave feedback on which ones should be prioritized. And so that wasn't just all me, it was a community effort. And so we read probably about half the time that we were doing readings was just quotes, selected quotes from different discourses. And then Nolan as well, we had time he read a couple of complete sermons. One of them is from volume 1, page 50, and it's a famous one that's got Adam God and a lot of other good stuff in it. So there was a couple of really famous ones that I wanted to get read completely, and we did do that as well.
Wasn't it also part of one of your requirements, Bart, that it also be something that he actually said from the podium in the tabernacle?
Yes. So we read from the Journal of Discourses, and I have a green screen, and then I have art that shows him in the tabernacle. Some of the quotes that we did read were not actually in the tabernacle. They were in the Bowery, which is an outdoor pavilion. And I do have the guy that did the artwork for the tabernacle. I do have him currently working on artwork for the Bowery. I had a guy go down to there's a Bowery replica at This Is the Place Park in Salt Lake City. And he went down and took some pictures. So there'll actually be a couple of different settings where Brigham Young will either be speaking in the tabernacle or in the Bowery. So I do want to have some historical authenticity to it. But I'm not really worried about was Brigham's beard this long on that date or whatever.
Yeah, thank goodness.
But you do consider this a historical documentary, I guess would be the term. And so you wanted to be as accurate as possible as far as where, right, and that kind of thing. Where
and the script. We were very keen on the script supervision. So if there was a word missing or misspoken, we would go back and re-record it.
So was it difficult for you, Nolan, to try to speak in his cadence and using his vocabulary? Did that take some effort?
Oh, it was actually very easy because there's nothing to compare it against other than the language. And he was a very erudite speaker. So, I didn't need to worry. I mean, the text kind of, you get a sense for the cadence just out of the text. And as far as the style, quite frankly, is probably Nolan imagining what Brigham Young might have sounded like and looked like, rather than, there's not a lot of information on it. And of course, the important part for me was to read it accurately, read it with passion. I personally believe, just by reading the text, that he must have been a passionate speaker. This is not a man who, what we hear nowadays, if you tune into conference, with this monotone droning, I can't think of the adjectives I want to use. I haven't had enough coffee. But, Brigham Young wasn't like that, I don't believe. I think that he was a powerful orator. And I tried to have my performance give him credit for the incredible speaker that I believe he was.
So how do you guys feel about the way it turned out? Are you excited and pleased and ready to get this going?
I haven't really seen anything yet.
Oh.
I've been keeping a tight lid on most of the recordings, but I can tell you that it looks really good. And I did share with you, Heather, I gave you a soundbite to share. Okay.
Yes.
And I don't know if, Nolan, if you listened to that or not. I think I sent it to you as well.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah. I did have a guy do some professional. He's a radio like a radio guy, and he did some sound. Yeah, he's a radio engineer, and he did some sound editing on it to make it have a little bit of an echo and kind of that tabernacle feel. So
I definitely picked up on that when I was listening to the clip, and I'm going to add that at the very end of the episode. So yeah, it definitely sounded like you were placing him in the tabernacle.
Yeah, it sounded larger than life, kind of.
Yeah.
Really good feel, and Nolan has that natural pipes anyways. Okay. So really, really good voice.
Great. So when does the first video come out?
I am having a premiere at my house. I'm having some friends over in the Portland area, and I'm going to show it to a few people at my house on October 5th. We're having general conference priesthood session at my house. We're going to listen to Brigham Young. And then on October 6th, 10 a.m. Mountain Time, I'll post the first video on YouTube. So I have a channel set up at youtube.com/afterallwecando. And then that location is where I'll be posting the videos. I'll space them, I'll post one, then I'll wait a little while and post another
one.
So
okay. And
it
that
should last quite a long time.
Oh, good. So that After All We Can Do is the website or the YouTube channel you started with your original project of the list of all the commandments you have to obey.
Yeah, it just happens to be the Google login that I had.
Okay.
The name of the channel is Mormon Infographics. Mm-hmm. So you might be able to find it if you search Mormon Infographics on YouTube. The channel name should come up, but the URL is youtube.com/afterallwecando.
Okay. Well, Nolan and Bart, thank you so much for coming on Mormon Expositor. I'm really excited for this project, so I think that we'll promote your website, your YouTube channel and stuff when everything gets running, and thank you so much for coming on.
It's a pleasure, Heather. Thanks for having me.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, thanks, Heather.
You say that man ought to die for transgressing the law of God. Let me suppose a case. Suppose you found your brother in bed with your wife and put a javelin through both of them. You would be justified, and they would atone for their sins and be received into the kingdom of God. I would at once do so in such a case, and under such circumstances. I have no wife whom I love so well that I would not put a javelin through her heart, and I would do it with clean hands. But you who trifle with your covenants, be careful lest in judging you will be judged.
I gave my heart to you, I swore it would only be for you, but I said that before you broke my heart. When the feelings you feel of you, I can't share mine with you. The lump of pain in my throat won't let me start, and I wish that I didn't ignore. The broken hearts get broken more. Sometimes in our lives we learn things done come back in turn. What did I do to earn nothing from you in life? The mistakes I've had don't do me any bad till I can't handle sad things I've been through. I could learn from mistakes and from sins, but I make them again and again. Above the oceans of tears that I've cried, to look down on myself and ask why. For you I won't change me again. It's hard enough that I am who I am. There's so many people who haven't walked in my shoes, but they say that they choose still to be me. Outside seems like a pleasure ride. I wonder which side of me they would be. I smile to hide all my fears, but still I can't hold back the tears. Oh, I wanna fly, to lose myself up in the skies, so that rain doesn't come from my eyes, and I can't hide behind all these lies. It's time to remove my disguise. missed trying to get that kiss. She said, wear clothes like this. I said, okay. I've been stomped in the ground, molded and twisted round so long before I found I'm not just clay. I'm worried what others might see. Instead of seeking approval from me. I wanna fly so fast that my past passes by, to erase all my past one last tries. If it's true that I'm such a great guy, why can't I look me in the eyes? I want to begin to think of me the way that I am, to forget all the people I've been. I've figured out reasons for why. Now just give me one more last try.